So welcome everybody to the third presentation in our room. It's my pleasure to welcome Marina. Marina is working on a topic that is very important because we need cybersecurity and resilience in the places where the people are. And where are the people? Well, they are in the cities, of course. In Switzerland, there are exceptions for sure, but but we need the security there. And this is the hot topic that Marina will be talking about. So please join me in giving a warm applause to Marina. Stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Marina, as just said. I'm aware this is the last talk before lunch, so I will try to keep it on time. But today I will be talking about the cyber insecurity of smart cities. So obligatory, who am I? In my day job, I do digital forensics and incident response at ZCert, which is the sectoral CCERT for the healthcare sector in the Netherlands. But in my hobby, because I don't have enough friends, I do IoT, OT security, that kind of fun stuff. And I'm also one of the organizers for the B-Sides Amsterdam conference, which is being revived after 5 years dormant. So very excited about that. Without further ado, has anyone heard the term smart city before? Can we have a show of hands? Good. Is anyone super confident that they know what it means? Yeah, we've lost a few. But don't worry, you're not alone. The original term was very much focused on sort of the technological aspects of smart cities. There are also definitions that focus on the more governance or community aspects of smart cities. But in my opinion, those don't cover the intersection of the two. Every government, every marketing department makes their own definition because there isn't an official one. So I decided to do that too. A smart city is an urban territory that uses ubiquitous IT and OT, as well as stakeholder partnerships to digitize and improve its functioning. This is a long definition. The reason for that is that smart cities are a convergence of highly variable software and hardware assets, as well as the people that use them, which means that they are also a convergence of the risks and vulnerabilities that they individually bring. So I'm going to be using some different concrete incidents and examples of things that have actually happened, things that could potentially happen, and hopefully that will illustrate why this is something we need to address as its own thing. But to start, I know this is a cybersecurity conference, but I want us to start with a creative exercise. I want you in the audience to imagine for a moment that you are a terrorist. Let's pretend your name is Pete. And as Pete the terrorist, you want to launch an attack on Bern because the fact that there is a fountain that looks like this means something has gone terribly wrong here. So as Pete the terrorist, wanting to launch an attack on a city, you probably need to gather data and intelligence to plan it first. Luckily, the city can help you with that. Like many others across the world, Bern has various smart city projects, one of which is an open data repository. And most of this data is unstructured, or you can grab it using APIs and use it for your own applications or your own purposes. But that's hard to visualize. So what I'm going to do is I'll just show you an interactive map, which is just one of the many things that a smart city entails. So this is a map of central Bern. This is where we are right now, right this second. And here you can see the current and planned building and construction sites all across the city. This is public transportation lines and stops. And here you have all the embassies, all the federal and government administrative offices, so things you'd expect to see in a capital city. This is all very useful information. You can use it for applications, for personal or business planning, all that kind of stuff. Then we have some fun stuff. So this is a map of all of the trees across the city, as well as what species there are. And this, which I thought was particularly cute, information stands and chestnut kiosks are one category. So you can't separate them. Even if I just want to see information stands, it will still show me chestnut kiosks too, which are, in case you were wondering, here. But then we have things that, if you have a hacker or even a terrorist mindset, are a little more concerning. So for example, this is a heat supply map, which shows you whether an area gets its heat supply from geothermal or renewable gas. Here we have every location of the geothermal pumps in the city. So if I were wanting to target any of these, I can find out where they are. And this is also a map of every single mobile antenna. Also notice where we are. There's quite a few. I have not found them yet, but I'm still looking. And all of this stuff is very useful in terms of projects or planning, but I would imagine they can probably be separately requested, whereas here they're just available all of the time. If you're Pete the terrorist and you want to launch a destructive or chaotic attack, all of this is very helpful for you to know. But this is publicly accessible data. What if we take personal data into the mix? We're going to go to the Netherlands, where I'm from. Last year, the Dutch police were hacked by an identified but undisclosed nation state. And this is an example of the sort of overlaps that we get in terms of stakeholder partnerships. So in the Netherlands, the Dutch police is centrally managed and have offices in all the cities, but they also have many smart city projects that use IoT, use audio sensors, use CCTV footage to collect information on various events to help with incident response and containment. So for crowd control, also for crime fighting. So there's a strong partnership there. And in this case, this nation state, maybe they were a friend of Pete's, maybe not, but they exfiltrated all the Outlook data for 63,000 police officers, which includes undercover officers, as well as Dutch government employees who were cooperating with them. So if they could do that, someone else probably can too. But Pete doesn't necessarily need to go hack the information himself. He could also just wait for it to be leaked, maybe theoretically due to a database misconfiguration or an insider threat. Coincidentally, all of this happened during COVID. So in one case, a couple of Dutch employees purposefully leaked and stole the information of Dutch citizens in their test results. I think at the same organization, but a different incident, there was a database misconfiguration which allowed every employee to see every record of every person registered in the Corona system, which includes not just your personal health data, but also your device information, which was used to track where you were going and whether you exposed COVID to other people. And in this last case, a private security researcher found a database of a testing company that was open to the internet, no password, no nothing, just hanging out with over 1 million records. Not just of Dutch people, but of tourists from all over the world who happened to be visiting at the time. So yeah, this is pretty low-hanging fruit. Pete could just take his Bitcoin wallet and go online shopping on dark web breach forums. Doesn't need to do much work himself. So far, I've been talking about the IT systems and data privacy issues that come with them, but that's just one pillar of smart cities. We also have operational technology, like this beautiful water filtration monitoring system we have. So I'm going to talk a bit about OT and IoT, and there's much debate about whether these belong in the same category, but for simplicity's sake, I'm putting them in the same box. And operational technology has a significant delay in development compared to IT. These devices have to withstand intense pressures, they have to survive temperatures, maybe sometimes physical impact, so they need to be physically sturdy and hardy. Unfortunately, that means that more modern and more secure software isn't capable of running on these old, outdated devices, because these things need to run for 30 years without errors and without any latency issues. So what they gain in terms of physical resilience, they lose in terms of software fragility and vulnerability. And then we have IoT, which are much more easily developed and produced. It's much cheaper to make them. It's much cheaper and much faster to, rework the software or firmware that's on them, usually. Unfortunately, they're also very frequently released without any kind of security testing or any kind of, privacy checks. And the fact that they are so easy to connect to anything with a pulse means they're in a very attractive initial access point. So combine this kind of vulnerable hardware with maybe software that has access to sensitive resources, and it starts to get very messy. But remember, you're Pete the terrorist. Where a company might see an inconvenience in investing in their data security or their secure coding practices, you see an opportunity. So I'll give you another example. This says privacy leak in smart meter. If you speak German, you probably already got that. For a while, Dutch energy providers had their own applications where their clients could check and monitor their energy consumption levels. For a long time, these were completely unauthenticated. So you didn't actually need to be a customer to view any building's energy readings almost in real time. So all Pete needed to do was put in a postcode, and he could have his pick of which house he wanted to observe. And on a grand scale, this might not seem like a big deal. The problem has been resolved. It was eventually. And that might not seem like a big deal, but if you are trying to maximize chaos and destruction, like I said earlier, knowing when people populate their homes or when people populate business areas is helpful information to have. And we're getting to another overlap, which is, between IT and OT as well as the physical sphere, because computers and everything, that might live in the cloud, that's very remote, that's very far away. But operational technology interacts with us. It has a direct impact on our lives and on our environments. Combining the two in civilian areas requires some care and caution. And since this is a very common architecture, I just want to walk us through it. So this is frequently used. Sensors will passively monitor environmental conditions and then take that physical input and convert it into a digital value, which gets processed and analyzed for later use. Frequently, that gets sent to an actuator, which takes a digital input and then causes a physical reaction in the world. So this cycle has to work well. This is used all over, in smart cities, in critical infrastructure, and this working well is the reason that we have clean water, that we have energy, that we have safe roads. So this brings me to my next incident. I don't know if any of you know this, but a good third of the Netherlands is actually fake land and should be underwater. So I live below sea level at the moment. So the Dutch have, I think it's one of the engineering wonders of the world, they have a very cool system of floodgates that control the water levels inside of cities. So what happens is sensors all over the canals monitor about 75 kilometers worth of water, and when the water levels get too high, they close the floodgates, and when the water levels get too low, they open them. At least they're supposed to do that. This is almost 2 years ago now, but during Hurricane Kieran, a computer glitch happened that turned the floodgate control in Amsterdam from automatic to manual. So during a hurricane with lots of rain, the floodgates to the North Sea were wide open, letting in extra water. And instead of the sensors detecting this and sending that to the actuators to automatically close the gates, they were waiting for human input. And unfortunately, the control center is miles away from Amsterdam. Nobody knew this was an issue. And it took one guy to notice that the water levels were strangely high and couldn't be explained by rainfall. After a few hours, they went and checked, saw the floodgates were wide open, again, during a hurricane. And by the time they got them closed, the water levels in 75 kilometers of canals had risen by over 30 centimeters, which is billions of liters of extra water. So if this one guy hadn't noticed if he was sick, I don't know if it was a new person who didn't know the lay of the land yet, we would have been flooded. And not just, millions of euros in property damage, but, damaged critical infrastructure, damaged energy, possibly some drunk British tourists. It would have been really, really bad. And this has been fixed again. It's no longer a single point of failure. They have extra cameras, extra personnel, extra training. But it was a risk the entire time, and it took a near disaster to notice and fix it. And adversaries like Pete the terrorist are making sure that these things happen on purpose. Last year, there were 412 attacks, 2 years ago, around 412 attacks on OT environments that resulted in physical damage. So hacker gets into a factory or some kind of environment, does something, and then machines break down or affect the production line. Again, digital input causes a physical change. Last year, that went from 400 to over 1,000. And this shows us very clearly, we have more and more evidence that attacking OT environments is not a temporary trend. More nation states are investing operations into attacking critical infrastructure, not just from a physical warfare standpoint, but also digital. We have evidence of more OT and ICS-specific malware being developed, which, from a researcher perspective, it's quite interesting. But then you think about the cost that, this shuts off telecommunications or energy for entire pieces of the nation. That has a very direct impact on people's lives. So that's not great. So if we go back to our smart city definition, we start to see how these overlaps between different environments don't just cause overlapping risks, but they exacerbate them. Pete has a wealth of information about critical infrastructure, about civilian environments, about civilians themselves that he can leverage in a variety of ways. To give an example, I was just doing some poking around. Here we have a login panel for a solar farm. This is in Switzerland. And I can tell because if you look around it, it tells me that. And this website actually has a vulnerability that would allow you to log in. However, thanks to a bug that breaks the website, you can't actually exploit it. So now we have security by obscurity, but that's something different. But this is just one example, and there are many more of these devices just publicly accessible hanging around. So this is on kind of the government national level. And then we go down to a more local level. This is a smart building sort of panel for some building. That one you can see, very identified very clearly. And this has all sorts of interesting industrial process information. And again, I can't directly log into this, but I'm just looking, I'm not touching, I'm a blue teamer, I'm not a red teamer, but an advanced persistent threat without any ethical barriers, I'm sure can very easily gain access to this. And I think, if anyone has doubts about whether this is a valuable target, I will remind them of a certain fish tank thermometer that was used by a certain threat actor to shut down and ransom a certain American casino. So this is not an arbitrary issue. And then to get to the personal sphere, I'm pretty sure this is someone's house. I don't know. I didn't really feel comfortable doing more digging than that. But these look like nice squares to add your own temperature values into. I could not find a login page, which means that, again, I did not test this, but I have unauthenticated access to cause physical changes in somebody's own house. That shouldn't happen. So I called this talk From Buzzword to Battlefield, not just because it sounds good, but I'm hoping to trigger a mind shift change and inspire some action as well. Given the evidence that I've just shown you, which is a fraction of what's actually out there, we can see that the increasing complexity of the systems that we live in and that we interact in cause exacerbating more kind of like worse vulnerabilities and risks that don't just isolate themselves to one environment. Without air gaps between our home environment, our business environments, our national environments, we don't have the protection of having threats be isolated to any one of them. When you have these connections, they can spread. And I think some of the other talks have talked about that as well. And I think for me personally, the reason that I care about this so much is that a company that makes an insecure IoT device or makes a terrible application, they get caught, they pay a fine, and then they keep doing it. But when data is stolen, when critical infrastructure is damaged, when devices are hijacked, people are the ones who suffer. And the whole point of smart cities is to make people's lives better. But we can't do that if Pete the terrorist can so easily take advantage of both intentional and unintentional issues to declare cyber war. And also in terms of data breaches, I think we've kind of been desensitized because it happens so often. But if there's a cyber attack and the only thing that comes out is that data is exfiltrated, we think, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. But it is really bad. Faith in our government institutions to protect us is a fundamental pillar of democracy. We can't trust those institutions and those governments when we have so many examples of things going wrong with no repercussions. So, what can we do about it? To start, if you happen to develop, produce, or sell OT or IoT devices, please do security testing. Invite researchers, invite students to come and break your things. It may cost time and money, yes, but the result is that you discover vulnerabilities in a controlled environment, which I would say is better than having a threat actor control them in the wide environment. So that's for one. I think Switzerland also is an excellent example of privacy-forward infrastructure and legislation. I think more partnerships with other countries who could model similar legislation might be helpful. And there have also been some efforts to create smart city security frameworks. None of these are widespread, but we can learn about them, we can spread the word. For instance, this is from the Five Eyes nations, which is a list of cybersecurity best practices. So this covers the IT and OT in smart cities as well as their overlaps. We've also got 4 things that touch on critical infrastructure. We have principles like cyber-informed engineering, and we have standards like IEC 62443. And those are very US-based, but those principles, just like from NIST, those can be used and applied all over the world. Generally, these kinds of devices don't change that much. And speaking of NIST, an independent researcher went and took the NIST cybersecurity framework and applied it for smart cities. We have a source for that. And he made it work for smart cities, which I think is a fantastic individual initiative. And when it comes to development and applications that are used in smart cities, it would be a good idea to use things like secure software development lifecycle principles. OWASP, for example, I don't want to name any for-profit companies, but OWASP has quite a good list of resources that you can use for secure coding practices. And all this goes to show that we already have a lot of the building blocks that could have a positive impact. We just need to start using them. But what about if it's too late to say security by design because it's already been built? Well, in those cases, I think it's important to have those conversations in all spheres of life, not just when we're talking to vendors or over governments, but also in our individual circles. Like, we have the tools and responsibility, we have the knowledge, which means it's our responsibility to share it with people who don't. For example, I don't know, family, friends, your kids' teachers, they might not know that something like a smart lamppost could be monitoring their movements, or that Linda from HR has access to all of their personal health data. We need to spread the word, and we need to reach the people that actually have the power to make decisions. So, yeah, I think that accurately expresses an emotion. But separately, I think that, like, to continue the conversation, we can use our in-person voices and our online voices as well. Anyone who has a social media following, like LinkedIn, for example, might be able to spread news, spread opinions. We can also vote not just with our voices, but with our wallets. So not to purchase insecure IoT devices and to make companies that produce them aware that we're not interested. And I personally also think education about IT and cybersecurity, starting from a young age, has a very positive impact, not just to steer kids away from cybercrime and into legitimate paths, but we need to agree that our data has value, and we need to teach that to the next generation. So in the Netherlands, for instance, there is an organization that targets at-risk youth who potentially are at risk for cybercrime to try to steer them into industry. And this is a Hack Shield. That's a video game that is actually used in many municipalities over the Netherlands that teaches cyber hygiene and cyber skills to kids in schools. So there are plenty of nonprofits, there are plenty of organizations. Potentially, you could also be contributing to them with your time, your experience, or your money even. So we can strongly encourage manufacturers and businesses to do secure coding practices and produce secure infrastructure, but they're not really motivated to unless it's required. And I think for we had a recent drama about this. This is a new slide, but for such an interconnected problem, it's good to have a bottoms-up approach, but we also need to think beyond, and we need to have legislation that is written not by politicians reading scary headlines, but by professionals who actually understand the matter and the consequences of decisions that are made. So sharing your professional experience and speaking to lawmakers, filing data protection reports, that does have an impact. So with that, I hope I've made clear why smart city security is important, why we should address it. And if anyone wants to continue any discussions, this is my LinkedIn. I don't want to keep from the lunch break, so I'm happy to talk afterwards. And yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marina. Thanks for the excellent presentation. I think we should spend time for one or two questions if there are. So there's one in the second row and there's one in the, sixth row. Let's start with the front, please. And for the people who are super, super hungry,
I won't take it personally.
I'd say please stay in the room.
This is Himanshu from CyberX9. Convenience and cybersecurity can't go hand in hand. Smart cities are the concept of convenience globally. And if we are proceeding towards the convenience in the functioning of cities, and governments are literally not investing that much of amount for the convenience they are getting to their people. So these are the two things which are very important to keep going hand in hand. Point one, and what's your take on this? And the second is, even the European nations also, my organization has done a research on Airporter, that is a service provider to Swiss Airways, British Airways, Lufthansa. And we found that Swiss diplomats traveling via Swiss Airways, British Airways, are giving their luggages to that vendor. And their complete scan of photo of passport, their biometrics, more than thousands of diplomats have been leaked in this. We had done an article on this in the Wired also. So
in the interest of time, can we get to the question?
Yeah. So this is also the convenience part. Like they are getting their luggages boarded on the flights. So do you think that convenience and security can go hand in hand? Thank you.
I think that's a good question. I think it's also a little bit more philosophical than I'm able to answer, but what I do know is that when things hurt, either financially or socially, that is when a change is triggered. So people get used to things. Like we got used to COVID, we got used to multi-factor authentication. Those kinds of inconveniences, I think it's not going to break the world. Like we can deal with it. We're going to be okay. To have an extra step, we won't notice it at some point. So I think it is possible to streamline it a little bit while still maintaining a balance. But as for the consequences of data breaches, I think historically it just hasn't been painful enough, and that's why it keeps happening.
Great, thank you. So time for another question, a quick one, please.
So, hello, Marina. I try to keep it quick, so I will discuss it later with you personally, if possible. So, do you think the upcoming EU Cyber Resilience Act will help?
I think it will, on the grand scheme of things. I think it's not a Band-Aid to cover everything, especially because with variable environments, it's hard to write very specific legislation at a high level. But the problem where it gets fuzzy is when it's too vague or there's no kind of middle overseeing part that makes sure the principles are actually applied. So then it's like, oh, I don't know, we send out one phishing email that says this is a phishing email, and then we call it a day, like that kind of compliance metrics. So I think if we have more more awareness and more visibility on what actually is being implemented, I think that can only happen once you have that kind of high-level initiative.
All right, so thanks, Marina. Please give her a warm applause. This is a bit of Swiss chocolate.
Thank you so much.